Okay, with the major box sections done of the actual fuselage and the wings and putting those bits together in the cockpit, we can move on to the next really nice thing about this kit, and that is our Tamiya recreated the Merlin 60 series engine. Now, it's very complex how it goes together, and it sort of is one of those things where you just sort of take your time and run through it, and it will just drop together with no problems at all. So what I'm going to do is give you a bit of a run through of how it all goes. Now, pay particular attention to things where it says glue and don't glue and things like that, and it will just make things a lot easier as you go. But it does all go together very, very well. So the first thing up is going to actually have you do is the bottom of the engine. So in here we've got part H20, H26 and 25, and they are non-glued, so you don't glue these because these are actually just lovely little push fits, and will squash together very, very nicely without the need of any glue, just like that. So that gives you that section there. And then you can put that away to one side. And then next you've actually got the actual one of the cylinder heads off of the V-block. Now you have to open up the holes. So using a very fine drill bit, if you look on the inside you'll see two holes just down here, and I've already opened those up as well because we've got a little part that's going to go on that. So what we can do, we can just pop these two halves together. Okay, taking a little bit of extra thin, we can just literally pop along, just glue the bottom half, just like that. Give it a good old squeeze together as you go, and what we're going to do, we're going to glue from the inside. So we're just going to go up the sides, and that will just stop any glue marks appearing too much, and just make sure you're all squared it up quite nicely, and that will just help things out. So that one is just going to go like that on there, and then what we can do is just by drop of glue in all three holes on the side there. Don't overdo the glue too much. And then we've got this part here, which is part H2 if you're doing it this way or the other way. So we'll just pop those in. There again, nice little fit, just pushes in just like that. Then if we come along to our fret, what we've got to do is get number H6 off. So we just cut this part off the fret, off the sprue. Just like that. With all the others you get the little tab on the underside. The easiest way to deal with that, to be honest, is a knife, and just go along, gently cut him off, medium file. Like I say, don't overdo those ones, otherwise you end up with a little cup shape in there, just like that. And this will go on the top. Now obviously there is a left and right to this as well, but the little tabs underneath will only go one way. So what we'll do is just pop this one in. So what we'll do, we're just going to touch the front, a little bit of a rub around the sides, just to make sure we're all in nicely. Just the least amount of glue possible, really. Don't want to overdo it. Now this particular side, which is the starboard side of the engine, we've also got another little part which is just going to go on here, which is different to the port side. So what we're going to do is just going to put a little bit of glue just on the end, just like that. And then this part here, which is, to make sure we've got the right one, H1, is going to fit just on the end, just like that. So he's going to go on there, just there, and just tapers slightly inward. So we've already done the same on the other side as well. So that gives us our sort of V-block to the engine. So exactly the same for the other side. It doesn't have the front bit, but that one goes on just like that. So that's our two parts of the engine, and we've got our centre part down here. And then what we're going to do, we're going to pop the bottom of the engine on. There again, it's not a glue fit again. So that's H27, and then obviously it should be very nice snug fit with no sort of massive gaps in there. If you have, just have a look around and make sure you haven't got any bits sticking up and things like that. So that's that one in. And then you can pop straight in with the V-blocks. Now I'm not worried about painting and things yet, because we're going to do these as a bit of a hole. So I'm not worried about painting these at the moment, because we're going to do this as a hole. So we just put some glue down on this one. That part's in. Same with the other side. There we go, that's in, all very nice. Now in between these, we've got part H5, and for that as well, we've got these here. You might be able to see on the top part, we've got a couple of little photo etch bits on there. So we've just got one to go. So obviously with all photo etch, we're going to need to glue this down. So we just nip this out of the fret, and then what we'll do, we'll just use a bit of super glue over the sides. Make sure you go down on the sides of it. Don't overdo it, it won't need much at all. And then with the detail side up, it should just lay over the front just like that, and you're going to get all three. So that's that one done. And as I say, these are all going to be painted black, so don't worry about it just yet. So this one goes to the rear. So what we'll do, we're going to pop some glue, generous amount, just down in both of those. Okay, and then this one will sit just on, just like that, give us our detail, and it's coming together very, very nicely. It's all looking the part now. So then obviously just check out your references and make sure you're happy how it's all going to go. So that's those bits. Now the front end, we've got the actual gearbox that comes off to the prop. So there we go, we've actually got the prop itself, very nice detail. These are parts H15, 16 and 17. So he's just going to go in there. Now don't use much glue because we don't want much glue around this at all. So we're just going to go very sparingly so we're not flooding it too much. There we go, we can just leave that aside for just 1 second as that's going. At the same time, what we've done here, we've got parts, sorry, this is 15, 16 and 17, just like that, which you're going to make up this one that's going to go just down in here, which is the pump. So he's going to fit just down on the side, just in there like that. Sorry, these parts here is H23, 24 and 22. Which are going to go at the front. And if we've got this sort of right, if we just put some glue at the top here, not going to worry about the bottom because it's going to push the hole there is going to go onto the pin here. And it should be a very nice tight fit. And then you still want the actual part here to turn as well. So that's all in just like that, looking very, very nice. So that's part of the engine built up. It goes together very, very quickly. You just have to sort of work your way through it. So that's those two done. Right, we've got the supercharger down the bottom here, made up of various parts. So if we just get these into play, what we've actually got here is Y5 and Y6, which are very straightforward, going to go together. Okay, so I'm going to glue this from the inside just down here, just to make that a bit easier. Okay, and then what we'll do, we're just going to pop around and let the capillary reaction of the glue do all the work. Just around like that. And I'll see if I've got the bit just at the back here. Here we go, that's all sorted. And then at the same time we can do the other part here. So we've got parts, let me get this all right for you. We've got parts H35, Y15, which is this one here, this one here. Let's get all these right. And what we're going to need is a couple of grommets and the bits from our little bags of nuts and bolts and things up here as well. So we've got here is our nut that we're going to want to have, which is our silver nut, I do believe, SB6, which is the silver coloured one, just like that. You can check it against its size in here. So it should fit very nicely just in the bottom, just like that. And we've got to get a couple of our little grommets on here as well. So we just snip these off of the sprue. Oh, a little bit too many on the go here. That's it. So we want two of the little plastic or sort of rubbery grommets. So we just have 1 and 2. Just like that. Try and cut them as close as you can to the part itself, like you would clean off sprue work. That way it just makes them a little bit easier to fit in here. So obviously there's no glue or anything going on with these because they need to move just a fraction. A little bit fiddly to get these in. There's one. And two, he says, knocking the first one out. There we go. So then making sure we've got nothing else to go in there, what we're going to do, also these parts are just going to go on top of the other and sandwich all in. And once we're sandwiched in, we're just going to run a bit of glue, there again, nothing too much around. And just to make sure they all stay as they should do, just grab a peg. Just to hold them in, and we're just going to put a drop of glue just down the bottom, just like that, because obviously we don't want it pulling apart and things. So there's that one done as well. So we just give that a bit of a hold, and then if we put a tiny bit of glue just down the bottom here, we can get this part on, which is part H35, which will just fit along the bottom, and hopefully will line up with the hole, which it does, and goes in just like that. So then at the same time, what we can do, we can just finish off just down here. I've got parts number Y11, 12 and 15, which basically just go together to make this one up. It's quite a straightforward part. And then if we just get this all sorted out and lined up. So we've got here H40, and then we've got here part H39, and this one is going to stick into the little hole just down the bottom here with any luck. So there we go, that one sits in the bottom just like that. And then if we just put some glue over the back area, just up here, we've got this one here which is H19, which will just cover the lot. If we've got it all right, should just sit over everything at the back and sit on just like that. And then if we've got this all correct, what should happen, we'll just get this one on first, which is that part that we built up from H15, 12 and 11. That one is going to sit just down here. Now they've all got little locating pegs and they only go one way, so it's not so much of a problem to fit and get them all sorted out. Like there, I was trying to get it on the wrong way and it won't go, so it makes you put it on the right way round. So there we go, that's that one on just like that. So then the actual top of the supercharger goes on the top like that. And then if we have got this right, which I'm hoping we have, this should sit on the front. So what we're going to do, we're just going to put some glue down the back here and a bit on the pin, just like so, and then this part can come along and locating it up with that pin. It should all just sit together very nicely and make up the supercharger just like so. So we're very happy how that's all gone in there, just like that. Okay then, so we've had this drying just a little bit. As you can see here, what we've got top of the manifolds going on as well. So we've got these parts here. So the easiest way I found to put these on is just literally put them on first and slip them in because of, you know, you don't want glue and everything. And they will sit in the middle, just like so, and then you can glue it once it's sat there. And just run a little bit of extra thin around down there and let that weld on. I haven't obviously glued it to the actual photo etch parts because it's not going to need it anyway. So that's that bit done. We'll leave that just to the side there. So what we've got now is the intercooler box at the top. So simple, we've actually got, if the camera would focus, come on camera, get in there. There we go. If the actual parts you got is Y3 and Y4 straight in there, like Y1, and you've got these other ones here. Now for the first time you're going to be using one of these magnets, which are absolutely very, very strong and very, very tiny, which is quite nice. So what we're going to do, we'll just pop this one up here. And we'll just make sure we've got these all the right way round and everything. So what should happen, if you've got it lined up all okay, and he says, hoping he has got it all lined up okay, it should just go one down there. So what we'll do, we'll just test fit it first. I don't think we have got it quite lined up correctly. So what we'll do, we'll just turn it around the other way. So it should be a box. So what I actually did there by mistake, I had it so it was like crossing over slightly past the other one instead of being square. So make sure you get it right there. Okay, so then what should happen, you got a large pin mark, so that will just sit in there. And he will hopefully, if we just put a tiny bit of glue down the sides there like that, this one will sit just in there like so. And then at the bottom we're going to need a tiny bit of super glue. So we've got some, or did have some on a, so we just pop some like that. Just going to put a drop of super glue down on this part here, and then the magnet will sit right on the top and super glue in and hold with any luck, just like that. So we just let that go for a moment. So if we're just looking at the correct way this was all going to go, it's going to go down. So the one with the magnet is going to go on the top. So this one will go to the bottom. So we'll just slip this little guy in the bottom there, and we can just glue from the top. Okay, give it a bit of a squeeze to make sure it all sits in there nicely. And then over to the top one, put a bit of glue here, both sides. This one, which is super glued the magnet in place, will hopefully just sit on the top. Which it does, just like so. And then what this will then do is glue onto the back box just here. If we can line this up and get this in, he should sit onto this one like so. So there we go, that one's in there and all fitted, and the magnet, that will just help secure the actual when we've got the cowlings on and things like that. So that's the area for that one. Now there's all these other various ones now, which if you just take your time and go through them, it's going to glue all onto the outsides of these parts, and I'm not going to run through them because quite a few, and then on the other side. And then what we can do then is get on with the rear bulkhead. Okay, so the engine, all we've done is push the supercooler in, and that's basically the engine done. So what we can do, we can paint that black in a minute, and then we can go around and detail some of the areas up and bring it really to life, and with lots of dry brushing and things like that, and a little bit of a wash. Hopefully that'll bring up to make us a fantastic looking engine, but it looks very, very nice, literally just in plastic like this as well. So that's that done. Now I've moved on a little bit. What we've done the bulkhead. Between the engine and obviously the fuel tank and cockpit. So that's that one done, and obviously there's lots of parts on here. There again, very, very simple. Just take your time and work your way through. Now what we've done here as well, we've put the engine mount straps on. So that's quite a straightforward as well. So we're just going to glue both of these in, and the engine will fit in afterwards. I have tested it because I was a little bit concerned about perhaps it wouldn't fit. But there we go, those all go in. So what we do, we just pop them in like so. Touch of glue, and then obviously we're just going to put a bit down in here for this engine mount. And what we're going to do, we're going to let this dry off, and as it's drying and going hard, we can actually, let's pop a peg in there, just hold that in. Then what we can actually do is start to put in some of the hoses, because what we're going to do, we're going to do this the same way as actually we did the cockpit. We're going to spray it all green, and then we're going to pick out all the details in black that need to be black, and obviously other colours. And then after that, what we can do, we're going to go around and dry brush this area the same as we're going to do for the engine, and really just liven it up, perhaps a little bit of an oil wash as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the hoses on, and I'll talk you through them afterwards, because they're a little bit fiddly and a little bit time consuming, and if we find any shortcuts, then I'll pass them on. Okay, so as you can probably see here, this is certainly livened up a little bit on the close-up. Obviously, there's lots of hoses go in here. They all do go the right way. Now, obviously, I spent a lot of time fiddling around and poking them through before I realised that if I had actually cut them off one at a time and did them by the numbers, it would have lined up a lot easier. Because what I had was the left on the right-hand side and things like that. Little thing I did, I had the oil filter on this side up here upside down, so consequently nothing would line up. As soon as I all looked at the instructions, took my time and went through it all, everything lined up an absolute treat. So that's the thing with this one. If it's not lining up and not fitting, there is normally a good reason for it. So one of the last things to go in here Let me just make sure we're right with the instructions, is to actually pop this last actual brace in, which is the belly brace. Let me make sure we just got this up the right way. So what we've got, a tiny little bit just in here, and then a little bit of glue each side. So that's very nice, and hopefully this will just go in and sit in. And these will come down and just line up in here. So we'll just give this one a little bit of a poke to manhandle this one in on this side just a little bit better. So it's a bit fiddly trying to get hold of it all and slide it in. There we go. That belly one's in the bottom there now and goes with the top. Now I'm not going to sort of stick this in to show you just for the moment, because obviously we've got to paint it separately, but basically now this fits in, locks in, and then what happens is we actually screw it. There's a screw going to go in through the back, which then lines up with that bolt, the nut that we actually put in there, and then holds it all together. Then we could just simply line up all these hoses and feed them in as they are. Now if you wanted to, you could go around now and liven this up with a little bit of wiring. There's a couple of reference photos that I've also added on the disc or at the bottom of the screen if you're watching this online. So those will give you a rough idea of some of the colours of wiring and things like that, although this one is obviously is Grace, which is a slightly different version of the Spitfire, but it's a similar layout. So there we go, that's those bits done. So what I'm going to do is let them dry off for the next sort of about half an hour, just to go off totally before I start pulling it around a little bit too much and end up with bits coming apart, and then we can get some paint on. Okay, we've got things moving along here. Now all we've done, obviously we put all those hoses in as we were saying, all in, we sprayed the entire thing green, and then all we've done is go around and pick out some of the little details which were called out for in the instructions anyway, quite straightforward in black. Then all I've done with a very thin brush and just dry brushed a few of the little areas just to give it that little bit of wear and tear. And what we'll do in a minute, we're going to give this a black wash just to give it sort of a more sort of toned down, dirty, sort of used look. Now the engine itself was sprayed just flat black. I know it says semi-gloss in the actual instructions and all the rest of it, but I find actually just for weathering it and dry brushing, things like that, it's better over a flat surface than it is a glossy one. I put a cocktail stick just for spraying up there, so we just have that out now. So what we're going to do is actually dry brush this one. Now with all dry brushing, all you're going to need is a little bit of kitchen towel, like this, and preferably a flat brush. Now when we say a flat brush, it doesn't have to be, but it really just helps because it gives a more sort of a better level type of look. If you're going to be using a pointy brush, obviously you're going to be putting more wear in the middle of each pass you're going to do. Now I know Rebel do them, Tamiya do them, this is a Tamiya brush and everything else, and they do quite big flat brushes. So this is the one I like to use because it's about the right sort of size, which I suppose is about sort of 1/4 of an inch, but you can have bigger ones just like this, but because they're flat they just do nice big areas. So what we're going to do, we're going to dry brush this one. Now when you're dry brushing, obviously you have to think about what colour you're going to do it in. If you're going to do it with a very bright silver, you're going to give a very high contrast on something like black, which may be a little unrealistic and a little too much. It's great for scratching and doing little bits of detail, perhaps like we've done on this one, but obviously if you're going to come along onto a black surface, it will really stand out. So what I like to do is to use more of a grey, or in this case what we're going to do is do this in a copper. Now the reason for doing it in a copper, we're still going to have that metallic look, but I'm hoping with the browniness of it, it's going to give it more of a sort of a toned down, sort of rusty, worn look to it. And by the time it has the black wash over the top, it'll actually give it a nice sort of dirty type of look to it. So you're going to use XF6 flat copper. So we get a good old shake up. And then what we do, we just like this. So what we actually have, you just take your paintbrush and then squash the life out of it. Make sure you get some nice decent paint. Don't use the thin runny stuff, you want the thicker stuff. Okay, and knock out everything off of this brush. And make sure you squash it down at the top. Otherwise what happens is you have a build up of paint, it runs down, and all of a sudden you end up with a thick bit going on. Then all we do, once you've got it on there, you just bring it up and then just lightly, little flicky movements, you can go around and start just dry brushing it and bringing it all up to life. Now if you're noticing it's coming out a little bit too much and it's looking a bit too sharp, Just go back, get more off of your brush, because you'd be surprised. You'll go on your paper towel and get nothing off, yet you come over here, you're going to get loads. So what we'll do, we just carry on flicking round as we go round, and you've probably got enough, even on a small brush like this, to get in there and do around about half of an engine side like this. And once we've dry brushed it, we can actually come back then and give it a bit more of a pick out details, perhaps a little bits of silver if we want to take nuts and bolts off and things like that. But hopefully you can see that on the close-up as well. You get this sort of, it's a more dirty grey look to it than it would be if you were going to come in and do it with a silver. If I was going to come in with a grey in that, I think we'd end up with too much of a clean, sharpish look, where we want this to be a more sort of warm, dirty. By using the copper, hopefully it'll just give us a nice more of this sort of dirty brown dry brushing effect, which will give us a more sort of weathered look to it. And by the time this is going to have a wash as well, hopefully it'll bring all those details out. So there we go, we're just getting a load more off this brush. Okay, so if we just going to make some passes under here, to say when you first loaded up your brush, just keep it to very light, gentle movements, and then obviously as your dry brushing goes on and more comes off your brush, you can actually get in there and do a lot more and push harder onto the surface as you go round. But certainly to start with, you just want little light movements like we're doing in here. And as I say, this is one of those things I've been a bit of trial and error to see how well, you know, different colours work with your dry brushing. So don't forget, if this didn't go right and you weren't happy with it and you think, oh, I don't like this copper colour, it's rubbish, you know, you can obviously just come back then and either go straight over it with something else or just spray it black again and start again. And that's the thing with it. You know, there's no golden rules to any of this. We're just trying to give an overall effect to the model. But I must admit, I quite like it, if I'm honest. It's working slightly better than actually I thought it would. So there we go, that's our engine looking quite nice, just like that, nicely weathered down. Now obviously you could come back with other types of dry brushing now, perhaps you want to do a little bit of silver in various areas, or if you wanted to come round then and perhaps take some off, you can go around with some grey to give it that effect of wear and things like that. So really it's personal choice, and obviously you can come round and put in little touches of silver for just bolts which have perhaps have had the heads where the paint's been taken off, and all those little effects you get in real life. So it's personal choice how you go around with this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to call it quits on that side of the actual brushing itself. I'm just going to pop over to here now. I'm just going to take lots off of this one as well. And we're just going to give some light brushing to the hoses on this one as well, to give it that sort of, I don't know, more metallic, warm effect. So as you can see, it just changes the look and just gives it a more dirty metallic effect than a straightforward silver. And obviously, you know, this is supposed to be a war aircraft, it's supposed to be, you know, worn down and various dirts and things going on, so that's the type of effect we're after. So we just give it a little rub around everywhere up here. Just get into this bulkhead as best as we can. Now we're going to give this a wash as well, and that's what we were saying, you know, literally if you want a nice sort of clean look to it all, then perhaps you're not going to want to go around and you know, spray a wash into it, because we want this to be a dirty one. What we're going to do is airbrush on a very thin coat, which we'll do in a moment once we've finished off these bits and got it together, and that'll give us that same type of weathering effect that we got actually inside the cockpit of the actual aircraft itself. So I'll just carry on with a little bit more dry brushing.